welcome back everyone. Thank you for joining me today. And today we're going to do a bit of an advanced tutorial on doing another engraving on the Glowforge, or any laser for that matter. But what we're going to do today is a little bit of image manipulation, and we're going to add some embellishments to this. So we're going to start off with this image of this couple. They're outside. There's very little shallow depth of field here, so it's basically everything's in focus from the foreground to infinity, and we're going to improve on that just so that we don't have all of this distraction in the background, and we've got a nice smooth canvas to put on some embellishments. So first off, what we're going to do is this image is going to be, final output is going to be 8 by 10 inches. So let's just quickly have a look here at the image size, and we can see if we go into inches at 300. Let's just reset that, turn off resample. So at 300 dpi, this is 7.42 by 9.43. So it's close, but it's not quite there. But what we'll do is we will wait until we're done most of our edits before we scale this image. Okay, so first off, we're just going to take a quick look here at the image and see what some of the things are that we need to do. A little bit of dark shadows in the facial area here, a little bit around the eyes here. Eyes are a little bit dark, and again, there's a lot of details going on in the background. If we were to look at this, let's just quickly jump over to black and white just to take a look, and we can see tonally it's pretty much the same tonally throughout the image, other than her very bright hoodie here. So we want to bring the faces out a little bit more from the background, and we want to have a little bit more definition. So before we jump into that, first things first, let's go ahead and select these people. What we're going to do is we're going to take the object selection tool, and we're just going to hit the select subject and see how well it does. And we can see it does a pretty good job, but if we zoom in here, we can see that it is sort of missing a few areas. If we look along the top of the hat, along the collar, along his hood, it's kind of going into the foliage down here. So let's just clean this up a little bit. So there's a couple of ways that we can do that, but I just find the easiest way to do it is just take the lasso tool, and we're just going to clean this up a little bit. So I'm just going to go in here and just knock out that. Just going to quickly go around here, add to the selection. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we want it to be pretty close. Again, because of its size, it's going to be very hard to pick out a lot of this stuff as being not perfect. Whoop. We'll just go in there and just have a quick peek down along here. Looks not bad. Okay, we'll go in and remove some of this. And let's go take a look over here. Let's go into her hair a bit. Oh, not quite what I want. There we go. Now that's not too bad. And let's go around his ear a little bit here. Okay, so we got stuff. Sorry. I'm going to get rid of that. And that's okay. All right, so we've got that. We've got them selected. Now, what I want to do is, before we do anything else here, actually, let's make a duplicate of this. So I'm going to duplicate the layer. Okay, so I have an exact copy. I'm going to unlock this one, which is the lower one. I'm going to save this selection just for later. So let's go in here and save this selection. And what that's going to do is just going to create a alpha channel here. Okay. And we can use that to reselect that same area later on. Now in the lower layer, what I want to do, so we'll hide this top layer. So we're just looking at the lower layer. What I want to do is I want to expand my selection. So let's go into modify. Let's go to expand this. And let's expand it by, sure, 5 pixels is good. All right, and that's just going to move the selection area out by 5 pixels. And then I'm going to go up to content aware fill. Actually, I prefer to use fill. And then the content aware here. Now again, if you've seen my previous videos, this content aware fill actually uses a different algorithm than this other content aware fill right here. They use a different methodology. And for what we're doing here, this one's just quicker and easier. So I'm just going to say good color adaptation. That's fine. I'm just going to say OK. And you can see it's sort of filled this in. And we don't really care about this pattern that's going on here because we're not going to see it. So if I just go and turn on this foreground layer again, we can see everything is still as it was. I'm going to go back and I'm going to select. I can either do it here, I can load the selection, or I can go down over here and just load in this alpha channel. And I just did that by holding the command key, and I believe it's the alt key or control key on Windows, and that just loads in the selection. So now they are selected and the background is not. Okay, and that's, we're looking right now still at the background copy. So let's jump up to the top copy. All right, and we're going to invert this selection. So if I go up here to inverse, now everything is selected outside of them. All right, and I'm just going to delete the background. Okay, so if I hide that one, we can see everything has been deleted from the top layer. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this bottom layer, and I am going to convert it to a smart object temporarily. That's going to allow me to apply some filters and effects to this without being permanent. I can go back and change them. All right, so what I want to do is go to the blur gallery, and I want to go to tilt shift, and we're just going to pull this down, and we can see what it's doing here is it is blurring the image background as though there was shallow depth of field. Okay, and we can adjust this to wherever we want, really. Okay, I'm just going to ease up on the blur a little bit. All right, and I'm just going to go in and I'm going to do a few little tweaks here. So I'm going to change the bokeh, and let's pull back the light range. Yeah, I'm kind of digging that. Too much. Too bright. You know, really just find what you like and what looks good for you. I think that's good. That's what I'm going to go with. Okay, so I'm going to say OK. And then I want to add a adjustment layer, and I'm going to adjust the background. So let's just let's do a levels. So we're going to apply levels, and just want to lighten the background. I want to push the highlights a little more. Just add a little bit more contrast. There we go, kind of liking that. And I'm going to do one more slight blur. This time Gaussian blur. And 1.2, yeah, I like 1.2, that works for me. There we go. Oops, actually, you know what? We didn't have the layer selected. Let's select the layer and do that again. So we're going to do the Gaussian blur. Yeah, we're going to 1.2. Good. There we go. Okay. So now we want to look at the couple here. We want to adjust them. So let's just twirl that down. Let's go to the foreground, and I'm going to again apply a curves adjustment layer, but let's change this one also to a smart object for the time being, and then apply that curve. So in case we want to tweak the curve, all right. And what we want to do is I want to bring out the shadow areas. Now we can see that it's also adjusting the background, and I'll show you how to deal with that in just a second. Kind of liking that. Okay, so if I just hold down the Option or Alt key, you can see that changes. Right now it's affecting everything that falls below it. If I switch this to, so it's just affecting this image. So basically it's acting as a clipping path, and the curve is only being applied to the background copy layer. All right. So if I could turn this on and off, you can just see the effect it's having there. All right. So I'm kind of liking that. I'm happy with everything as it is. One more time, I'm going to select all of these together, and I am going to convert this all to another smart object. All right, so everything is contained inside this smart object, and think of smart objects really as a merge of all the layers into a container, and you can go into that container. So if I double click on this, it's going to open a new file, which we can see all of those layers that I just had. So what it's doing is it's nesting files within files, if you've ever wondered how that works. But we'll just go back to the original one here. Okay, and now I'm going to add a black and white. Where are we here? There we go. We're going to add black and white, and I'm going to say use previous layer as the clipping mask. And we're going to go in here and we're going to start to do some tweaking. We're going to push the greens and the yellows and the reds. Again, keep in mind we want really, really light skin tones in black and white when we're doing engraves. We don't want them to be too dark or too flat across the skin tones. Let's just see what happens in the blue. So that's affecting his shirt a bit. It's affecting the stripes in her hoodie. That's looking pretty good. I'm liking that. Okay. So we're going to say OK. And now I'm going to select this, and we're going to go into Sharpen Unsharp Mask. We're going to really push this up. A lot of sharpening is required when doing engraves. Make sure there's good contrast between areas of light and shadow. You almost can't have too much sharpening. There we go. Say OK. Looks pretty good. And we are now going to add a levels adjustment. And we're going to push this to 85. And if I hold down the Alt or Option, I can see where my highlights are. I'm just going to pull this up a little bit. So everything that you see white is going to be pure white. And if I go to my shadows, everything black is going to be pure black. But because I've applied an 85% output level, it's going to take anything that is 100% black and it's going to clip it to 85. All right, and we'll say OK. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add an embellishment on here. But before we do that, remember I had said that we're going to do all of our adjustments and then we're going to scale this image. So now I'm pretty happy with this. I like the way it's looking, and I'm going to go in and just take a last check here. One of the things that I want to do, I want to just lighten a few things. So I'm just going to do a little bit of dodging and burning in here. So I got my midtone set to 10%, and I'm just going to, oh, let's make sure we've got the little image selected. Oh, that's right. We need to flatten because we're still in a smart object. Sorry, let's back this up just so you can see what's going on. So we've got a smart object. So let's just go ahead. I'm happy with this overall. So now I'm okay with merging this or flattening it. It's going to do the same thing in this case. So let's just flatten the image. Okay, so now we can go in and I can just do a little bit of dodging. And I want to add, so let's go to choose the brush tool, make sure our foreground color is set to white. Let's pick a brush size that's just slightly larger than the highlight in the eye. And let's just make the catch light just a little bit brighter. They do tend to close up a little bit. And I also want to go in and I want to just lighten the teeth a little bit. That's looking pretty good. And we're now going to crop this to 8 by 10 at 300 pixels. Right about there. Right about there. Good. And I'm going to add one more small pass of unsharp mask. So let's go sharpen, unsharp mask. And let's drop this back a little bit. There we go, happy with that. Now let's go image mode, grayscale, image mode, bitmap. We're going to set it to 425 pixels, halftone screen, say OK. We're going to set the screen frequency to 80, the angle to 35 or negative 35, and the shape is line. And now we can see that we have a halftone pattern applied. Now we want to add, in this case the customer would like me to add a heart with the word love up in this corner. So what we need to do now is go back to mode and change this back to grayscale. And you can see that the halftone is still there. Alright. I'm going to use my shape tool, and I just happen to have these heart shapes here. So I want to make the heart a dark color. So I'll just sort of draw it here how I want. And then I want to distort this. So right click, go to distort. And I'm just going to make this the shape that I want. It's kind of working for me. Maybe like that. Enter. And then we're going to add the word love. And this is the font that I've chosen. It's called Adorn Coronet. Scale that up. There, kind of liking that. Okay, these two layers, what I want to do is merge those together. And I want to lighten them. So I'm going to go into levels, and I'm just going to bring this to around 53, 50, somewhere in there. 51. All right. And I'm going to go to the blending options for the layer. I'm going to add a drop shadow, and in this case a drop shadow doesn't need to be black. You can make it any color you want. In this case I'm making it white. I'm applying a screen to it, and I'm not going to put any distance on it because I want it to be more like a halo. I'm going to put quite a bit of spread on it, and spread is basically pushing itself outward from the edge of the selection area, and then the size is the amount of blur. So in this case I'm using a 41% spread and 79 pixels of blur, and I like that. That looks pretty good. I'm going to say OK. We can flatten this if we want, or we don't really have to, but we can. So we can go in and we can have a look at this, and you can see that the blur sort of tapers off into the halftone here. And yeah, there we go. So now the last thing to do is save this out. So I'm going to go into my Save for Web options. I'm going to make sure that it's PNG, Doesn't really matter if transparency is turned on because there is no transparency. So I'm going to save it as PNG. Save. There we go. All right, let's send this to the machine and see how it turns out. So there you go. Turned out the way that we expected. I'm really happy with the end result. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to fire off your questions below in the comments section. Please check out the show notes. There's some important links there. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'm looking to grow my Patreon quite a bit. And as I do, I will be sharing more and more goodies on there. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Make sure you click the bell so that you get all the notifications. And I look forward to the next one. And thank you very much for joining me today, and we'll see you again. Bye for now.